Topper Takes a Trip was a silly film from 1938, and it's a direct sequel to the film Topper from 1937. Both films were directed by Norman McLeod. The film stars Constance Bennett, Roland Young, Billie Burke, and Alan Mowbray, but sadly no Cary Grant this time around. And look, while I enjoyed this film, it's a funny little film, his absence was still notable and did detract a little bit from the film. His pairing with Constance Bennett was really well done in the first Topper film, and I really missed his cheesy, cheeky mannerisms. I mean, let's be honest, Cary Grant generally makes any film better. But in any case, he's here only in a few flashback scenes that, according to the credits, were graciously reused with his permission. Yeah, I can hear it now. Hey, Mr. Grant, could we pay you a chunk of money for a few of the clips of you in the last film? Why, sure. In any case, the film opens up with the ghostly character Marion, played by Constance Bennett again, who reappears initially around the log, and this was the set where the car crash had taken place in the first film. And as mentioned, Cary Grant's ghost character George isn't there, but instead we're introduced to a comical ghost dog instead, Asta, who's played by Mr. Atlas. So he's a puppy friend who's along for the journey as well this time, and he's also in on the same ghostly vanishing gimmick as well. So we'll get to see some of those antics through the film. And he joins Marion on her adventures as she finds out from a newspaper headline that there's a Topper divorce trial that's going on. So the film then cuts to goofy courtroom drama where this poor, nervous Topper who has taken the stand. Again, he's expertly played by actor Roland Young. He's doing his best to explain to an attorney the weird events of his recent hotel stay and the ghostly visits from Marion. The attorney and the judge both seem completely baffled. Now, Billie Burke is there as Mrs. Topper, and she seems kind of confused and sympathetic, but through this film she's being driven through this divorce by her manipulative friend, this Miss Parkhurst, who's played by Veri Teasdale. Well, the trial doesn't go on for very long. The judge kind of loses it, throws out the case, and Marion's ghost appears in the court invisibly and drags Topper out, and they head out, of course, for drinks. And of course, silliness results. So soon Topper is in a drunken state and calls home to find out where he is. And he gets the butler character again from the last film. This is Alan Mowbray as Wilkins, the long-suffering servant character, and he's in his pajamas. We find out from Wilkins that Mrs. Parkhurst has apparently convinced Mrs. Topper to pack up, head to France, and get a divorce there. So Marion convinces Topper to go after her. After a brief stop at the bank to get his passport, and, some obligatory silliness with accidentally get locked into a vault, they head off together to the Riviera. Topper gets a room at the same hotel that Mrs. Topper has been staying at, and the hotel manager, realizing who he is, gets all nervous and tries to send him off, but he's insistent on staying. And of course there's the obligatory goofiness, as even though he's staying there alone, he orders double portions of food and double drinks and whatnot. Franklin Pangborn is great as this baffled hotel manager. I thought he was very entertaining through this film. Well, they find out that Mrs. Topper is being wooed by the dashing cheeseball, this Baron de Rosy, who's played by Alexander Darcy. He's basically just a gold digger, though, and he's laying on the affection pretty thick with Mrs. Topper. Marion, meanwhile, convinces Topper to try doing some gambling, and sure enough, while Topper's down there just befuddled, trying to play the roulette wheel, we see that the ball just seems to magically jump right to his winning number over and over again. Now, he's a little reluctant about this, but of course he ends up leaving with a ton of money. So soon Mrs. Topper, she's going to go and visit with Topper, maybe to try to reconcile, but wouldn't you know it, there's one of those wacky mishaps where the maid happens to encounter the ghost dog. She freaks out, and in that moment of terror embraces Topper right as Mrs. Topper arrives, and of course she sees it misunderstands, assumes the worst, and runs off in tears. You know it, the type of thing that happens in these wacky movies. Well, next day at the beach, the cheesy Baron, he's still there, and he's still trying his best to woo Mrs. Topper. And she's like partially burying him in the sand at this point. But before you know it, ghostly Marion shows up and invisibly removes his bathing trunks. Now, understand, he's under the sand, so no worries, this is still G-rated silliness. But the vanishing trunk scene happens, and the Baron starts freaking out. It's actually a pretty clever special effects scene as you watch it. You know, I really love these old school practical effects. Well, anyhow, he starts to panic. More silliness follows. And you know what? I'm going to leave the review here. We're getting close to the end, and I'll just let you figure out, hey, does Topper finally reconcile with his wife, or does that goofy Baron manage to woo away the poor Mrs. Topper? And does Marion, along with her puppy friend, do they find a way to return to Cary Grant in the afterlife? Well, I'm going to leave the review here and let you check out the ending for yourself. But this was silly fun. So some quick closing thoughts. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I would have preferred to see Cary Grant again. But you know, as you get into this film, it still works. And, you know, there's some generally funny sequences, particularly when Mrs. Topper's batty comments come out. And to me, those were some of the funniest bits of the film. For instance, when she and the Baron are at the beach, she up and leaves him buried in the sand. And he protests, "Do something, the tide is coming in and I'm going to drown." And she just replies with, "Oh, don't be silly, Baron, it's only water." I mean, what? But Roland Young is great as this befuddled Topper character again. And I love seeing more of his goofy physical humor as, you know, he's being removed from the court by those invisible forces. He does the great, just the body comedy. It's funny stuff. Constance Bennett as well was fantastic as the lovely and playful ghost. And honestly, don't read too much into this supernatural story about why she is here on a mission alone. Just go with it. Topper Takes a Trip from 1938 was a silly sequel to the first Topper film, and it's worth checking out.